Hi, I'm Larry Johnson, and welcome to this edition of Brought to You by the International Unity Club, as well as TOS, with the support of the TOS staff, the cameramen, camerawomen, the sound is a very professional staff that helps us try to open up lines of communication between the United States and Russia, and pleased to have Marina Kim with me today. I've noted I've been talking this week entirely to men, and it was about time we get a woman's perspective. So you're under sanctions by the United States? Why? And you may not even be able to answer that because I got banned from YouTube. I don't know why.
First of all, I want to say hello for the invitation. Thank you very much, and thank you very much, TOS, that they are informational partner to this dialogue. Larry, nice to meet you too. And of course, in this uneasy time, we always greatly greet the Americans that are ready to listen, to hear the voice of Russia. Concerning sanctions, starting from 2022, I'm under personal sanctions of the EU because I, as a journalist, was doing my journalist job, and I was speaking about the referendum process at Donbass. I was at Donbass, I was in Zaporozhye, I was in all those 4 republics that were actively voting and joining Russia. First of all, I do not think that you need to impose sanctions on journalists. Russia doesn't do that, but somehow EU actively does it. So, since it's for a few years, I don't even watch after this. I don't even know about American sanctions. Is that so?
Well, it said that they're also in U.S. sanctions, and I thought, okay. I thought maybe you had been notified, and they said, hey, yeah, we agree with the Europeans. We can't have a free press.
Yes, we have in Russia as soon as we started having sanctions over us, and there's like, what, 30,000? We, in Russia, would like to come up with some kind of proverb. So we are ready to package it in a packet. Also, it's like in the Soviet Union there was a trash ban, right?
Yeah.
And we would put the plastic bag. So that trash bag, we can send another package of sanctions of Europeans and Americans that doesn't have a sound mind in it.
This, I think you're barely old enough to remember the Cold War. You're probably, you were a youngster when the Soviet Union came down. But I am shocked by the role reversal that has taken place over the last 35 years. Because it was in the 1970s and in the 60s, 70s, when the Soviet Union was this controlled information space. There was Pravda, but there was only one truth, and the name Pravda was considered ironic because a lot of times it wasn't the truth, and it was controlled information. Now, here we are, 35, 34 years later after the collapse of the Soviet Union, and the countries that are controlling information, that are putting out propaganda, that are punishing those that try to speak with an alternative voice, it's the West. It's not Russia. Russia is actually, I was on a CNN program with a fellow named Brian Stelter, and he was accusing me of being a mouthpiece of Putin. And I had to point out to him that because I appeared on RT, and RT is a Russian-controlled station. And I pointed out to Mr. Stelter, I said, well, look, I'd been a talking head on television about terrorism incidents. I'd been on all of the major U.S. television stations, all of the cable stations, Fox News, MSNBC, CNN. I had done British television, BBC, Canadian television, the Canadian Broadcast Company. The only 2 television stations did not require a pre-interview, And you know what I mean by a pre-interview. You call the people up and say, oh, let's ask you some questions. We want to find out what you're going to say. The only ones that didn't do pre-interviews, RT and Iranian Press TV. Iranian Press TV. And so, you know, that tells the story right there. Never, and I started doing RT programs 9 years ago, and never, ever did they say, we want to know what you're going to say about this particular issue so we can decide whether or not to have you on. So, and out of your background as a journalist, how does that strike you?
Well, first of all, it's very interesting, as from journalist to speak about the state of the modern journalism world, the inheritance. I worked 20 years as a journalist. I look young, but first of all, I'm a specialist in international relations. I graduated from MGIMOM, and I have 20 years in journalism. And what I see today now in 20 years, it's that full disagreement, what written in the books, what was written in the way I saw the mass media would look, the world mass media, and in practical life, everything was vice versa. And you have parallels, like Cold War, Hot War. Who is that watchdog, and who is the press of the free world? But today, in a world scale, no cliches are working. The meaning is that the technology of mass media has changed so much that the usual rules, they don't work. And everything is connected to those changes, not because there's a political change, political different era. That today, big corporation as TASS, I work at VGTRK, this is Russian state TV, first channel, main broadcaster, network, all big mass media. And they work on the old format. And you see in the informational scale, we have not the size of the studio, not the reputation. It's important what you do in that second. Like big monsters, like CNN, big TV stations. They're fully unhelpful in a military situation, and where they have to check their position, agree with the editors, with the owners. The blogger comes in, Chinese or Iranian, Russian blogger, and gives that news with more volume, very interesting, without a back thought, and that modern mass media allows him to get to great audience. This is the technology of how news are given that has changed. I've worked all my life in news. Oh. I was a reporter, was a correspondent. I am the person who would flesh to flesh. My whole blood is in the news. So the old methods are not working. Though 20 years I worked at the channel. When we had special military operation, the first thing I did,
И оказалась тут в месте событий, в точке событий, для того, чтобы понять, что там происходит. И оттуда делала материалы, которые потом уже брали разные каналы, потому что в тот момент, как независимый...
Natasha, I've lost you. Hello?
Могу продолжать?
The translation disappeared. Hello? Technical difficulties.
In which place?
I don't know. Natasha? 1 minute.
I can translate it.
Yeah.
Which part of the story?
So you were talking about the camera operator.
On the military operation.
Right.
sorry, Larry,
Oh.
the electricity went off.
Oh, the electricity went, okay, we're good. Okay. Sorry to have interrupted you.
То есть все-таки
So
поменялась сама
the
технология
changes of technology took place in the production of news and the content production globally in all mass media. So this is why it's important. Not the budget are important, not the people, how many people you have.
важный человек,
The person is important with his or her independent point of view and a possibility to give information the way he does it or he thinks is necessary. So that's where we see the breakthroughs, including Tucker Carlson. To us,
такой человек,
he's like a person who is the voice of another America. The America not that we like hear a passive, even
да, то есть по традиционным
on a traditional information ways. So what I think is the tendency, there's a transformation from traditional media to new media. That's what we call it now, new media.
Let me ask you this, because one of the things that has taken place in the United States has been the corporate consolidation of the media. 50 years ago, there were multiple independent media outlets. And now that it's been increasingly under the control of just 3 or 4 corporations. In contrast, and then when people talk about Russia, they say, oh, it's all state-controlled media. But I'm sitting here going, okay, you got TASS, Sputnik, Izvestia, Television One. I mean, what I see are, I don't see the state controlling everything. And it looks like, in contrast to the West, which is, let's call it, follow this capitalist model where the large corporations take control, it looks like there's actually more independence here in Russia. Is that a fair assessment, or am I not seeing it properly?
Ну, моя оценка ситуации,
Well, my evaluation is that Russia,
со средствами массовой
with the mass
информации
media,
менялась
has
с
changed
началом СВО.
with the beginning of special operation.
Целая такая,
We have like
целый пласт
a whole layer
военных корреспондентов,
of military correspondents
которые фактически собой заменили
Yeah.
традиционные
who
СМИ.
has changed the traditional media with their
Причем это
presence.
не только военные корреспонденты,
And
которые,
it's not just
допустим,
military
из
journalists
независимых средств
from
информации.
independent
Это
sources.
даже те военкоры,
It's even
которые
those
работали
military
в том же
journalists that were
ТАСС,
working in the second channel,
они
TASS,
были на переднем
but
крае,
because
так
they
как
were
они
at the
очень быстро передавали
first
информацию,
front lines and they were given true information, the society got on that, and at some moment that even those military correspondents, they became the conscience of the nation. So people started trusting more to them because they read telegram channels in their iPhone or phone, and it's a very interesting thing that came as a new direction, new development, and it's a sunrise of independence media.
То есть в самой критической экстремальной
So
ситуации
at most critical situation,
военные корреспонденты себя
this
повели
military
не
journalists
профессионально,
showed themselves not just professional,
но и
but
грамотно с точки
also
зрения этики.
correct on
Они
ethics,
выдавали тот взгляд
morals.
на события,
They were giving the view on the events that the society needed.
Now, I don't know if this is an unfair question, just tell me, because I don't think you were old enough to remember. But when the Soviet Union was involved in Afghanistan and the military coverage of that event under the Soviet system, how did that contrast with what we're seeing today with the coverage of the special military operation?
Ой, ну контраст необычайно огромный контраст.
Very strong contrast.
Хотя бы он связан с
At
тем,
least it's
что
connected
для
that
Афганистана
during Afghanistan we had to have a credit, like
Министерство обороны, как журналисту,
confirmation from the Ministry of Defense. You had to have a huge camera, huge tapes,
большую технику
a lot of machinery, a lot of equipment.
в режиме
And in the mode of military operation, it was, there's no point.
классическом
Because in the classical mode, you can't work. Because if you're right there where the
Right.
war takes place, where you have bullets,
вертолеты,
where you have helicopters,
мины, где есть опасность.
where there's danger, you cannot make a movie professionally with a professional camera. So what happened there,
Журналистики, это
as a journalism, it was like an old story, ancient story, put it this way. Now you can be a journalist in a special operation even if you have a mobile phone.
Yeah.
And connected with a mobile phone, you just make a movie of everything what takes place, take people on camera, civilians. You put on the camera that, you know, the sky and the drones, and that's what we have at the front line. And of course, that's absolutely momentarily picture. It carries more truth than anything that you can put technically and you know, very difficult to make.
Now, one of the, there are a lot of narratives being pushed in the West. I personally believe they tend to be intelligence community propaganda, designed as part of an information operation. But, for example, the claim that Vladimir Putin is now under great pressure because he's perceived as moving too slowly in the war, in the special military operation. And you've had some commentators, like, I don't know if you're familiar with a man named Gilbert Doctorow, who's an academic, but he lives in Europe, a U.S. academic living in Europe, and claimed that if Putin didn't increase his level of attacks against Ukraine in the West, that he would be overthrown. Have you ever heard any of that? Or
honestly, I've never heard that. Maybe it was in the beginning, or now they have such a
no,
narrative.
it's now. It's like the having previously worked at the Central Intelligence Agency, and I had a brief stint working on what was called the 1985 to 1989. So, what was that?
Tell her it's CIA. CIA.
Yeah, Central Intelligence Agency. And I had a brief stint, 8 week, it was like an internship, working on the Afghan task force, which was on the operations side of the house. These were the ones providing the information, the propaganda about the Soviet involvement in Afghanistan. So I saw how that process works, how stories are prepared, narratives are created, and then at that time, you know, this is ancient times when it was all print media or standard broadcast. You didn't have the social media. But I saw how those stories would get fed out in order to shape public perceptions. And what I'm seeing right now in terms of efforts in the West to shape public perceptions is to make claims that Russia is short of gas. There are lines of cars at the gas stations. That the public is turning sour on the war because of the massive casualties that Russia has suffered. That there's great impatience with Vladimir Putin. Again, these stories are being put out there more, I think, from a propaganda standpoint. And that's what I'm trying to get assessed. Are you folks hearing that here, or is it like, you know, we don't know where that's coming from?
A good question, because in the very beginning of 2022, our audience in Russia, they were under attack, massive media attack. That was a hybrid attack. It was very strong, especially in social media. That was adding to with the phone calls from Putin's name, from Zelensky's name. It was full, the internet was full of it. Everywhere we saw so-called propaganda from Ukraine came up. In the beginning of 2022, we were not ready. And as a professional, as a journalist, I have seen that it was fake news.
Yeah.
It was directed to disinform. I saw the work of certain groups of people, how they influenced on students, on elderly. But at that moment, everything was so unusual for the society. Of course, the society was kind of given into it and listening to it.
сейчас, спустя практически 4 года,
And now, 4 years later, I want to say that we don't notice what takes place. It's not that
атаки стали слабее.
attacks are stronger.
Все правильно. Разрабатывается план,
Everything is working well. The media forum, the narratives
на основе анализа,
are based on the analysis of our social media, working media. Constantly, they put in certain topics, but we don't react to them.
у меня вот было такое, давайте на каждый повод реагировать.
I said, okay, as a journalist, let's react to every news, every article that they took, that they say that Mariupol with a colossal dead bodies. Let's go there, show it's not so. Of course, we tried to react,
Мы поняли, что это абсолютно бесполезно.
but we understood
Людей
it's useless because people, at a certain point, they have their immune system built up against the news. You know, this military operation, it's already not they don't get involved as much. And so
выбрана долгую стратегию.
we played a long strategy not to react every check that was coming, every point, every pinch.
Интуитивно
And people with intuition, with a very calm emotional state, they take a look and they understand where the truth and where the lies. If they say that Russia is turned over with the sanctions, that $1 is 300 rubles, that we cannot sell oil, the economy is falling, we have no food, but
Yeah.
we've got plenty of food, we have good life, we fulfill the plan of the country's development. We have a very good budget and very good numbers for the plant where we had the 27, 28. We have great scales of projects that are developing, and it's supported financially. Everything is well, and no matter what Western propaganda would scream,
на 155 раз
what
в это не веришь.
we don't believe it. Whatever it's 155th time or 1000th time, we don't believe it.
I was last night. I was invited to dinner at the home of a friend who lives here, and so he lives in northern suburbs of Moscow. And so while driving there, I started filming the gas stations to film all the long lines of cars. And I think we saw, I got 4 different gas stations on, short videos. And I think I saw a total of 3 cars filling up with gas. And so I've been saying that, I sort of wish there was that gas shortage, because that way there'd be fewer cars on the road and we wouldn't be stuck in these huge traffic jams. So it's the nonsense that is being put out.
Я полностью согласна.
I fully agree with you. Everything that is connected with a gas station, it's an old narrative that they use that's still from Obama, Biden times,
Yeah.
that Russia is the country of the whole one gas station.
Ждем каких-то новинок.
That all comes from CIA, whatever, but we wait for some new things that they will come up with and invent. They need to be more creative. And concerning how the news are coming in, that flow, the people of Russia, population of Russia, they read books, they watch movies.
И оно, мне кажется, не так
And I think it's not so much under pressure of news
много новостей в Европе и в Америке.
as they read the news in Europe and US.
Сказал Трамп. В обед не сказал Трамп.
It doesn't matter what Trump says, morning, lunch, and dinner, it would be 3 different statements.
Вечером включит телевизор,
A Russian would come in, turn on the TV, get some dinner, and he will live his regular, normal life. And this is what Americans or CIA or special forces understand, in Brussels also. And that Trump doesn't. They think that with this chaotic movements, they would reach Russians somehow in media and social networks,
они могут нас как-то подавить.
that they can pressure us. No, it's not so. And a character Russian man, we have creativity. We
Yeah.
watch over things.
I don't know if you remember in 2022, starting in like April, there was a story of almost, if not every day, at least once a week, about Russia's running out of missiles. They're going to be out of missiles, and oh, they're having to take their washing machines and refrigerators and steal the computer chips out of them. Yeah. Did you realize at the time how ridiculous all of this was? I mean, were the Russian people laughing at this?
We laughed a lot. We had a good laughter about the refrigerators and the chips in 22. Started laughing from that point. Yesterday we were laughing that from our president. Now we are laughing at the toilet bowls.
Yeah.
You heard that joke, right?
No, I haven't heard that.
Yesterday was another package of sanctions against Russian companies.
Right.
Trump, especially Besson said, Ministry of Finance,
Yeah.
it would be a killing sanctions for Russia. Russia cannot sell their oil, and the sanctions were also sanctions certain some things, including toilets. Children, constructors like Legos and toilets. And Putin said, well, they shouldn't joke about toilets. They would need it soon. So, you know, this word, we call it being smart. It's impossible to translate that word as something in between being, being smart, having a humor. It's like being savvy, being in any situation. We will find a minute, chit-chat with each other, and have a good laugh over what the world says on the media.
Yeah, this is one of the things I'm trying to convey from my perspective to the Russian people, is to try to help them understand how twisted the Western view is of Russia. Scott Besson, he's not a stupid person. He's well educated, a lot of experience on Wall Street. Yet for him to believe that if they impose these sanctions on Russia, they don't understand that you can build a wall around Russia. Russia would never export another item, and Russia would be just fine. Russia has all of the natural resources. There's no other country in the world that has the wealth of natural resources that Russia does, on top of the human resources, the people. And not that Russia wants to cut itself off and isolate itself, but you don't, I'll say it this way, you don't want to get into a gunfight with someone who owns a plant that manufactures ammunition, because they can manufacture more than you can ever obtain. And that's the situation, I think, with Russia. These efforts to impose sanctions carries with it the assumption that, oh, if Russia doesn't continue to have access to these markets, it's going to die and wither away.
I am afraid that Besson, together with Trump and with a circle of people that give Trump some hints, they don't know Russia. They don't evaluate the whole world correctly, because the world has changed. And not everybody in America is ready to see that. And I want to say thank you that you are the path. You are the way that we can, sometimes you want to knock the door to Trump and say, hello, the world has changed. The world is different. We're not limited by Mar-a-Lago, Florida.
Right.
We have China, we have Media, we have Malaysia, we have Indonesia. There's Africa and huge Eurasia continent that in its natural resources is above of what America has together with Canada. So surely, not just politically, but also economically, this world has changed.
No.
And all the connections has changed. To me, it's a strange thing that people, financial powers in America, they don't understand it. The example with oil, however U.S. or EU would stop Russian oil, the energetic balance, the energy balance did not change. produce as much oil as they did, same with gas, it just flows to the different logistic paths and pipes. It's impossible to stop that process. It's natural for all big countries to African countries. They play a big role. They need these resources. So these sanctions, as a fact, they just took they took the mind out of it. And I think that already for 4 years, not depending on the level of IQ, you can understand that it will not work. Even if it is personal point of view of Bassett, he would shut down the Gulf, or they would close the road to the Navy, or Russian boats. It's not going to change anything. The world will still find a path. And I think it's a huge mistake to evaluate economical situation like this in the world. The whole economy in the world is not built around the dollar.
Yeah.
Like it was 5 years ago.
Yeah.
So today, the calculation of the natural resources, they are 50 or 60% are calculated in the national currency, ruble, yuan, rupee. Take a look at this balance. It's changing quite quickly.
Do you think the Russian people now understand that they are witnessing the birth of a new global financial order, and actually a new global financial political movement as well? Because the era in which the dollar was the controlling currency, and the United States the hegemon, that is now changing, and it's not, the dollar hasn't disappeared, and as President Putin has said, he's not trying to replace the dollar, but they are creating a situation in which Russia, India, China, name your country in the world, can no longer be held hostage by the United States. And if you don't do this, we're going to punish you with the dollar or prevent you from having access. Do the Russian people understand that that's what's taking place right now?
I think, yes, Russian people understand that world economical order has changed, and that it influences the political order also. This absolute assuredness by administration of United States doesn't matter Trump, Biden, next Clinton, next Obama, next Biden. If the pants are full of dollars, then the life is going to turn out well. Today, this is not so far away from the truth. Dollar is just a question of trust. And in the world, unfortunately, or fortunately, we don't know, the trust to American economy that has a great debt, American banks, American companies, American administration. Today, it's such a low level that all this monopoly of the dollar, it goes through, it just have last days. And I think that a couple of years would pass by, and the process just makes it faster. And we see a completely total different order of how you treat currencies. BRICS are not getting together just for a chance. Everybody says that there would be a new system of payment. It's already, this request has matured since a lot of things has changed. You can't take off the account the cryptocurrency and the crypto world that happened, because it's an alternative. First thing to the dollar and not to the state, because people in the world don't trust the dollar. They change the currency. And since these mechanics are there, it's impossible to stop them. So I think that we are in a breaking point where the whole economy will change so much and so fast that the dollar will not stand a chance. In America and United States, they have to get in and build to that new world order, and not to make a new statement, like a new order.
Right.
Я об этом как журналист делаю проект, который называется «Новый мир».
So now I make a new project that I call The New World.
И как раз делаю интервью с
And I make the interview with
основными такими спикерами,
major speakers in Russia,
VIP-спикерами,
like VIP speakers, like
Yeah.
Lavrov,
про геополитику,
who speaks about geopolitics,
с министрами, с
with ministers,
Мы рассуждаем,
premiers,
как быстро меняется.
and we discuss how quickly it changes. And
Наши чиновники,
it's
которые, на мой взгляд,
interesting for me how our government workers thinking, because they understand things are clear,
разрушают западное крыло Белого.
not like the ones that are trying to destroy the White House.
Now, are you also a member of the Duma? Are you?
Да-да-да, я являюсь депутатом Государственной Думы.
Yes, I am the deputy
Комитета по IT.
on the IT department.
So, describe for me what it's like both as a woman in this legislative body and what role the Duma can play or should play in Russia's international relations.
Ну, я не так давно
I just
депутат Госдумы.
recently became a deputy about a year.
До этого
Before that, 20 years, I worked as a TV host, journalist, and correspondent. 22, I was a military correspondent.
около 20 фильмов
About 20 movies about military, different Nazism topics
украинских
from Ukrainian militants, about our departments, divisions, about the work of volunteers and medicals, military journalists, and only then I came to Duma as a person who,
как журналист.
as a journalist, I have seen a lot of things unfair, what you need to change, what needs to be changed. So I got into the key legislative body of the Russian Federation. All conversations that what they don't get solved in
Yes,
Russia, so
yeah.
fake news. And
Что Дума это тот самый консервативный орган,
Duma is that conservative body
порядок вещей в нашей
that determines the order of our things through the laws.
власти в России,
Legislative body in Russia is very conservative,
что, наверное, хорошо
which I think is good
для государства.
in the stability of the state.
Как журналисту,
But as a journalist,
депутату, мне, конечно, хочется
an experienced deputy, I want more speed
столько изменений происходит.
because so many changes take place
Фронту все было то, что нужно.
that the front lines would need what they need, but the nature of Russian state power, that's what is unstable because it's conservative.
Консервативность,
And I think this conservative state,
избиратели,
they go into the hearts of our voters,
и наши избиратели
and our voters,
выбирают такую власть,
they
которая может гарантировать
vote for such a power that would guarantee them big processes, the process of development for the long time. So for some journalists, we want a great speed, more flexible, but as a human being or individual that understand the scales of the whole country, and many people live in this country, I think that
консервативно.
it's good that Duma is very conservative. For example, we have a AI in South Korea, Parliament of South Korea. They have a whole department of AI that is already,
Через искусственный интеллект,
through AI, they're working on the legislature.
с одной стороны,
On one side,
классная технология,
it's kind of dangerous technologies that probably,
много чего предложит.
and maybe will offer some things. But on the other side, the legislature is supposed to consist from people that weighs yes and no, positive and negative,
И жизненный опыт такой,
that has legal education and human experience to balance
а не
the
бросаться
issues
и кидаться,
and not to go from left to right to extremes
чтобы быстро решить вопрос.
to solve the issues quick.
Does Russia now have a policy with regards to AI, the whole artificial intelligence, or is that a work in progress, trying to figure out what to do, how to deal with this?
Это действительно такой правильный
Yes, it's a process under construction.
что Россия
I think that Russia
в чем-то пионер
is a pioneer.
инноваций.
If we speak about innovations in legislature, it's not just in a knife, but for example, we have made the law about economy platform
Урегулирует
that would be regulated between all the participants of the big platforms. For example,
коммерческие,
commercial platforms, marketplaces, databases.
весь массив законодательства, который
So this whole massive legislature
развивается очень быстро и очень
volume, it develops quite quickly. And each week we make a law that describes that.
даже в европейских странах.
But even in the European countries,
То, что касается искусственного интеллекта,
if we talk about AI, we have educated the commission. I'm part of that commission
вырабатывает
that works on an approach to the legislature concerning to describe the AI. But there's a certain fork, like a crossroads.
искусственный интеллект, он же пронизывает абсолютно все сферы.
AI goes through all spheres.
Сейчас пока вырабатывается
And now we still work on an approach
правильно
of how to correctly
в законах это должно звучать. Да?
sound in the law.
По отраслевому принципу
It's like
делать закон
a certain branch principle, or make a law for each branch, or make a
такую надотраслевую
over branches construction
определять.
that would be able to determine basic principles.
Okay.
Опять же, нигде в мире
Again, know in the world that you have a law that we can kind of copy. So we think we're pioneers in that.
Well,
That would be ahead of the planet.
I don't know if you've had a chance to consult with many of your colleagues in the Duma, but what's sort of the general view right now of Donald Trump after, here we are 10 months, going into 10 months into the Trump presidency. Is he seen as a reliable partner in negotiations or erratic and unpredictable? I mean, I've got my own view is I think he's been very erratic, and if I was sitting in a position in Russia, I'd be going, it's like watching a ping pong match or a tennis match. You're going back and forth, except Donald Trump's playing both sides of the fence.
И еще в жюри тоже сидит Дональд Трамп. Смысл в том, что,
The point is that,
конечно, в России были
of course,
определенные
Russia had
надежды,
hopes
ожидания
and expectations, high expectations.
после президентства Байдена.
After Biden being a president,
Знаете, как коллективный Байден.
Yeah.
Мы уже всех в Америке называем Байденом.
it's like we have understanding as a collective Biden. Everybody in the U.S. we call a Biden.
Конечно, мы все, что
Because everything, all the politics
при Байдене,
that were taken, politics that were taking steps during Biden's time, is just really you don't have a mental health.
но когда
But
пришел к власти Трамп,
when Trump came to power, and he made that beautifully, like a Hollywood movie, with a bullet by his ear,
Yeah.
то есть он въехал
he
в свое нынешнее состояние, в свое
got into his state, into position of being a president on a golden carriage and walked on his golden throne.
И, конечно, были
And of course we had expectations that with this throne he will use as directed.
мы с воодушевлением
We were encouraged, the Anchorage meeting in Alaska.
наверное, было ощущение, что
Probably we had a feeling that Trump
который может разговаривать с Путиным,
is the politician who can talk to Putin at least on the same level.
но это очень важно, потому что
But it was important for us that those politicians that carry,
даже их не считаем,
we're in Russia, and Merz, Macron, we don't even count them as politicians, that new generation of EU leaders. For us, they are,
такие временщики, какие-то
they're
недоделанные виды.
not finished leaders.
Вот Трамп, учитывая
Trump,
свою
now
красивую
counting his beautiful story
избирательную кампанию,
of his election campaign,
Right.
he showed himself as a historical person.
как в России мы читали,
And as in Russia, we have read all those things. We saw that Russian-America meeting in U.S., surrounded by great jets, military power of U.S.,
уровнем почета.
with all the levels of respect.
Но
But
в дальнейшем,
further on,
буквально несколько месяцев после колледжа,
a couple of months after Anchorage,
постепенно
step by step, we started to have this
разочарование,
like a disappointment,
Но это разочарование,
bitter disappointment, but
то есть мы сами себя уговариваем,
we
что
try to
будет
talk
всё.
ourselves into not being disappointed.
Потому что, конечно, вот,
So for us, of course, whatever in US or in Russia, people are people, and we want our country to be friends.
считаем, что как
We
в
think that
период холодной войны
with the Cold
в
War,
мире есть две сверхдержавы,
the world
ядерные державы,
has two states, big countries
это мировой порядок.
that are determining the world order.
Right.
And we live in that
Мы
thought.
от нее не отказывались.
We're not refusing from that. We had difficult 90s. We have we have got some strength, and we think that we're equal. But
Все вот эти повороты, развороты,
due to all these turns and twists
сначала Анкориджа, сейчас
from the beginning of Anchorage, they are turning inside out,
ну, это как бы выглядит как цирковое представление.
and it looks like a circus show.
Yeah.
И мы никак не можем понять, какой номер
And we can understand
то ли вышел
what
акробат,
what we have, acrobatics or a clown,
и мы за него
or
переживаем.
we are concerned about this. Maybe he has to do, he has to turn inside out,
Нам помочь. Или это
or it is
какой-то, значит, номер, когда выходят клоуны,
whether it's a clown that's trying to play,
и нет никакого
or where it's acrobatics that's trying to work out. So what's the point? So we're in expectation what this show is going to end up, and what would be in the final thing, because the last thing is not spoken, it's not given. They still have negotiations. Both parties are in. But right now, that show program that they have,
прямо сейчас нам не нравится.
we don't like that show.
Yeah, it seems that President Putin's exercising a lot of patience. He doesn't seem particularly alarmed by what I would call Donald Trump's erratic behavior or his contradictory comments. And I have been told by someone who I trust his source that there actually is more communication going on behind the scenes between Trump and Putin than is known in the public. So, for example, I was told that on Putin's birthday, Trump called him and they spoke for 40 minutes. Now, the White House, neither the White House nor the Kremlin have admitted to that. So, I'm inclined to believe there may be something to this, that part of what Trump is doing is putting on an outward show to keep these domestic opponents who want to have a war with Russia, sort of placate them without actually giving them anything of substance. As we saw with the oil sanctions that were put in place, I'm told, I haven't read them, but from someone who read it, he said it's basically sanctioning Russian oil companies to take their property that they own in the United States, but they don't own any property in the United States. So it's like a sanction with no teeth. Is that your understanding?
Ну, я верю, что
I believe that
оцениваю,
I evaluated that
является
Putin is
политиком исторического,
the politician of a historical scale,
никогда не принимает решений
and he doesn't make decisions
эмоциональных состояний.
out of the emotional state.
Yes.
Четко,
Yeah.
выверен,
Clear,
по-хорошему расчетливо.
very good calculated.
Поэтому вот вся совокупность
So
факторов,
this,
которые есть у него,
all the factors that he has on the table,
мы не знаем даже
we don't know even the 10th part of it.
то, что переговоры,
The negotiations that took place
называется, за закрытыми
behind the closed doors
шторами,
or closed curtains,
что есть та невидимая
there's
часть,
something that the public doesn't see. For sure, I agree that they have such negotiations, not just Trump, Putin, but other channels also.
там происходит реальный разговор.
So that's where the real work is laid.
Пена, которая
That foam that we see that spreads out on the mass media, undoubtedly this is something that you feed to the public.
Но в этой
But
пене
in that foam, they have very sharp questions for Russia. And a question about providing tomahawks to Ukraine.
Right.
The question sanctions about our oil companies. I would not put them into the point of teethless or non-dangerous. For sure, it is the action of the enemy state towards Russia, open animosity towards Russia. And at the moment when they follow, Russia will answer.
Okay.
And concerning those emotional swings of the Trump's administration, and everybody's very emotional there. Everybody that surrounds him, it's like a drama queen. The whole administration is a drama queen. And it's a soap opera that we watch morning and evening, and they just like flow with each other. They like it, they enjoy it. One thing we can do is ask them to drink some good tea and come down. We talk about, not about ambitions or personal interests, but we speak about the safety of the whole world. And Russia speaks about that many times, starting from the December 21, continue now with the Trump's administration. We don't, we're going to solve with Ukraine everything on a battlefield. We don't need anything. We just speak that the world is still at the line where a lot of people, a lot of countries have nuclear weapons. When the conflicts start fired up from the sparkle on the east, on the Taiwan, I think we're in a very serious situation in the world. And to allow yourself to have emotional activity, you can't do that. Like Russia and U.S. can allow themselves. And coming out of that, we expect a very constructive approach.
Okay. Marina, unfortunately, our time is up. It's gone fast. Thank you so much for sharing. I'm sure that once this, because this will be published in both English and in Russian, and I look forward to getting your voice in front of my colleagues in America so that they can hear from a smart journalist as well as smart legislator, sort of the Russian view. Thank you so much. And we're